Hey everyone, my name is Madeline from Cuties Crochet and today I want to show you how to crochet this beautiful bag. For this project you will need some t-shirt yarn in the colors that you like. Then you will need some darning needles and something to cut your yarn with. Of course you will also need a crochet hook and I'll be using a 10mm one, but you can choose any hook that suits your yarn. For the beginning you want to take the two strands of yarn together and pull out a long tail of yarn. It doesn't matter if it's twisted, it will just be as colorful when you're crocheting. Okay, let's jump right in. Take the two strands of yarn and what you want to do is you'll make a slip knot. Just like this. Then insert your hook and pull tight. Perfect. Now we want to chain 14. So grab the yarn and pull it through the loop on the hook. Then repeat for the next one. So that's 2. Then 3. Then 4. And then 5. And continue doing this until you reach 14. Okay, so I now have 14 and it should look something like this. The yarn is a little bit twisted here, but that's okay, we won't see that in the end. For the next step, we want to make a single crochet into the second chain from the hook here. So we skip the first chain and then make a single crochet into this chain. So go into the chain, pull up 2 loops, get the yarn, and pull through both of them. And that's how you make a single crochet. This is our first stitch of the row and we will mark that with a stitch marker. So put it in here and then lock it. Alright, to make the back round, we want to make another single crochet into the same chain that we just did. This is called an increase, and we will do that at every beginning of the row. So that's another single crochet. And now we want to make one single crochet into every chain until we reach the end of the row, except for the last chain. Attention please. So I accidentally skipped a stitch in the next step and I wanted to tell you to avoid confusion. So we will make a single crochet into the next stitch, not into the one that I just made, in the one before, and continue making one single crochet into every chain. For the last stitch, we want to make 3 single crochets into it. So that's 1, then 2, and 3. This is also to make the back rounder. This is how it's supposed to look like after finishing one row, aka the one side. Because we will now turn over the piece and keep crocheting on the other side. You can see that this side also has chains, and we will make single crochets into them until we reach the end of the row. To make your life a bit easier and not weave in too many ends, you can carry the yarn from the slip knot on the back. Keep count when making the single crochets so you don't miss any chains. After you've done 11 single crochets, make a slip stitch into the first stitch of the row. So where we put our stitch marker. Okay, so you can start seeing that the back is beginning to look round, and this is what we want to maintain. So for the next step, we want to chain 1 and then make a single crochet increase again at the beginning of the row. So take out the stitch marker and chain 1. Then go back into the same stitch, our first stitch of the row, and make 2 single crochets. After we've done the single crochet increase, we will continue the pattern from the last round, and we will single crochet our way to the other side and make 3 single crochets into the same stitch again. And then we will go back with single crochets and slip stitch into the first stitch of the last row. I will speed up this process just a little bit because it's the same thing that we did in the last row. And that's our row 2. For row 3, we will do the exact same thing that we did in row 2, except that the numbers of the single crochets that we need to do in between to get to the other side is higher. Maybe you already realized this in row 2, but it's just natural because we are increasing each row. In the beginning of the row with a single crochet increase, and in the middle of the row with 3 single crochets. After you've done row 3, chain 1 and then count the stitches. It should be 35. After that, make 5 rows full of only single crochets. So no more increases anymore. We want the back to gain height. So for each row, chain 1, then make 35 single crochets and then slip stitch into the first stitch of the last row. Repeat this for 5 rows. After you've done 5 rows, chain 1, then cut the yarn and fasten off. This is how your bag is supposed to look like. We will now move on until the handle. To make the handle, move to one side of the bag and then search for the middle stitch. Then count 3 down from the stitch on each side and mark them with a stitch marker. Insert your hook, grab some yarn and pull it through and chain 1. Then go into the stitch, carry the other yarn on the back, and make one single crochet. Pull everything a bit tight. Then continue making single crochets until you reach the next stitch marker. After that, we will make a slip stitch into the first stitch of the row and start crocheting in a round. After you've done your slip stitch, chain 1, and then keep crocheting single crochets in a round for 22 more rounds. Okay, so I've now done the 22 rounds and we want to connect this piece onto the other side. But before we do that, we need to put some stitch markers in here as well and make 2 rounds on the other side. So put the stitch markers in and repeat the same thing that we did on the other side. I have now done the 2 rounds and I just slip stitched into the first stitch, then chained 1 and fastened off. We are now done with crocheting and we want to connect the 2 pieces together. First, we also want to chain 1 and fasten off on the other side. And make sure to leave a really long tail so we can use it for sewing together the pieces. Now put your darning needles on the long tail. I will also be using a thimble or more like a rubber thing for my finger so that I can hold the needle a bit better. Okay, so on the bottom piece we want to go into the stitch next to the knot. And then pull the yarn. Make sure it's not twisted anywhere. You can now see that the two pieces are together. Now we want to do the same thing but on the top part. So we go into the stitch right next to the knot. Now we want to repeat the whole first part, so go into the same stitch from the bottom and then into the same stitch on the top. It will just make it a bit more secure. In between, pull the yarn a bit tight, but not too tight. Alright, so we just made the foundation and we want to continue the same pattern as we did on the first stitches. So go into the next stitch from the bottom and then into the top next stitch. And then repeat to make it secure. Repeat the same motion from the bottom to the top until you reach the last stitch. In total, you should have connected 14 stitches, 7 from the bottom and 7 from the top. So now we're done, and this is what it's supposed to look like. And now the last thing to do is to hide the yarn, and we do that by going into random stitches. After you went through a couple of stitches, we can cut off the yarn and then just hide it in between. Cut the yarn and then hide it in between the stitches by pulling a bit on the bag. Repeat this with all the other strands of yarn that you have left. And that's it for this tutorial. Thank you so much for watching and I hope you enjoyed. If you have any questions, just leave them down below in the comments. Thanks again and bye bye.